Shalom and God bless everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about the Y-DNA haplogroup E1B1B and its presence in the Levant and Middle East. So before I do that, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment to see what you thought about the video. And enough of that, and let's get into it. Okay, so it says EM215, this is from Wikipedia, or E1B1B, formerly known as E3B, is a major human Y chromosome DNA haplogroup. EM215 has two basal branches, EM35 and EM281. EM35 is primarily distributed in North Africa and the Horn of Africa and occurs at moderate frequencies in the Middle East, Europe, and Southern Africa. EM281 occurs at a low frequency in Ethiopia. Okay, that's just a little overview on Wikipedia. So the distribution. In Africa, EM215 is distributed in the highest frequencies in the Horn of Africa and North Africa, specifically countries Somalia and Morocco, whence it has in recent millennia expanded as far south as South Africa and northwards into Western Asia and Europe, especially the Mediterranean and Balkans. EM281 has been found in Ethiopia. Almost all EM215 men are also in EM35. In 2004, M215 was found to be older than M35 when individuals were found who have the M215 mutation, but do not have M35 mutation. In 2013, the Cristofaro 2013 found one individual of the Khorasan, northeast Iran, to be positive for M215 but negative for M35. EM215 and EM35 are quite common in Afro-Asiatic speakers. Remember this. The linguistic group and carriers of EM35 lineage have a high probability to have arisen and dispersed from the Afro-Asiatic Aryamots. Among populations with an Afro-Asiatic speaking history, a significant proportion of Jewish male lineages are EM35. Haplogroup EM35, which accounts for approximately 18 to 20% of Ashkenazi, 8.6 to 30% of Sephardi Y chromosomes, so their father, son, paternal Y chromosome, Y DNA haplogroups are EM35 or E1B1B. It appears to be one of the major founding lineages of the Jewish population. So as you can see here, haplogroup E1B1B, this is their Y DNA distribution. So as you can see right here, the darkest color is around 80 to 100% E1B1B in the Horn of Africa, specifically Ethiopia, primarily Somalia. We see it in regular frequencies in the Middle East, some frequent, a lot in North Africa, like from 30 to 60%. Specifically here in the Maghreb region and the Iberian Peninsula, we see it in Italy, Greece, Anatolia, even some parts of South Africa, all across the coast. And so I'm going to be explaining that why these. If you have E1B1B, you're a descendant of Abraham, you have your descendants of Ishmael and the Arabs, descended from Abraham, because the Arabs that have E1B1B here are descendants of Abraham by his son Ishmael and his other sons by Keturah. And so a lot of people that live in the Near East and in Northern Africa have haplogroup J. Haplogroup J is from Japhetic. So it's from Central Asia, Eastern Europe, because they invaded and they dwelt in the Thames Shem. So the E1B1B carriers got pushed down to the south, as you can see here. But all of this area was around here at one time. Okay, so we have some archaeological findings from this area, the Levant, E1B1B, pretty much, EM215, EM35, right? Israel and Tufian. Dodge the hijack with these dates because I don't think the Earth is that old. But just be careful with these dates. Like these later dates, like 12700, right? So yeah, we see the Rafaqat cave. This is specifically in Israel, as you can see here. We have EM215, EM35, EM35, ECTS 10,098, EC. We have the same thing here, E1B1B, E1B1B, and E1B1B. Specifically, this one is ES2 1355. And then we see the maternal haplogroups here is the paternal, right? So these are all found right here. The first 5 are found in the Rafficat cave, then the Pekin cave, and then the Hazor right here, E1B1B. So we have ROA2, K, N1B, J2A2, J2A2, and H for the maternal haplogroups. And so we have Hazor, we have the Israel Chalcolithic era, right? These are the different eras. So Natufians, they were the ancestors of Semites. I think they were probably descendants of Shem. You know, so just so you know. So this one is from Tel Megiddo, 3450. This is probably more accurate. So he was just simply haplogroup EM123. So he was probably E1, B1 or something. But I just want to prove that it's found in the Levant, because a lot of people think that E1, B1 or anything with haplogroup E is not found in the Levant. And so we have ancient DNA. Okay, so it says, according to Lazardius, 2016, Natufian skeleton remains from the ancient Levant predominantly carried the Y DNA haplogroup E1B1B. Of the 5 Natufian specimens analyzed for paternal lineages, 3 belong to E1B1B1B2, E1B1B1B2A, E1B1B1B2B, E1B1, and E1B1B1B2, subclade 60%. Haplogroup E1B1B was also found at moderate frequencies among fossils from ensuing pre-pottery Neolithic B culture, with E1B1B1B1 and E1B1B1B2 subclades observed in 2 of 7 PPNB specimens, around 29%. The scientists suggested that the Levantine early farmers may have spread southward into East Africa, bringing along the Western Eurasian and Basal Eurasian ancestral components separate from that which would arrive later in North Africa. Okay, so we have a source right here, Genetics and Archaeology of Ancient Israel, Wayne State University, by Aaron J. Brody and Roy J. King of Stanford University, and Aaron J. Brody being from Pacific School of Religion. So it says, Aegean immigration to the southern Levant. It says, the Y chromosome patterns of the contemporary populations offers a lens through, this is page 19 by the way, offers a lens through which to explore the possible demographic effects of the Iron Age 1 Philistines in the far southern coastal Levant. Apart from the J2A patterns listed above, previous studies show an Aegean focus for 2 non-JY lineages, EV13 E1B1B and GM527L13. EV13 has been shown to have originated most probably in the Balkans around 9000 BCE as a Mesolithic marker, while GM527L13 arose somewhat later during the late Neolithic era in coastal western Anatolia. Both lineages track Greek colonization events from the present-day Marseille province of Greece colony in Massalia in the Mediterranean to Greek colonies in Ukraine and Crimea. We also find EV13 and GM527 among contemporary Palestinians, Jews from Israel. Table. This result suggests EV13 and GM527 may track immigration of the Aegean continents to the southern Levant. So this is their opinion, but the point I want you guys to get is that EV13 haplogroup E1B1B is in the Levant. Okay, so I might not agree with everything they're saying here, dodge and hijack, but you get what they're saying. EV13 is in the Levant, and it's pretty much in the Mediterranean. Did I do that again? Hold on. Okay, so it says, thus, DNA markers of contemporary populations offer us hints with which we may posit hypotheses about ancient Levantine DNA. Immigration from the Arabian Peninsula during the late Bronze Age or early Iron Age might be expected to contribute to J1E markers to Israelite populations, settlements, derived sea peoples may amplify the frequency of Aegean-specific markers EV13 and GM527 among Philistine skeleton material, with the persistence of J2A in coastal Levantine Canaanite populations should be discoverable and ancient DNA samples from the southern Levant, with full Y sequences, the dating of EV13 and GM527 from the Aegean source populations and Levantine target populations will more be reliably estimable than conventional dating from YSDRs. Okay, so EV13, I wanted to get into more detail on this haplogroup. Okay, it says haplogroup E1B1B1A1B1A migrated in large numbers from the Balkans into Europe about 4,500 years ago, triggered by the beginning of the Balkan Bronze Age. During this migration, members of the haplogroup mainly followed rivers connecting to the southern Balkans to the north-central Europe. Technological leaps often cause lineages to grow dramatically in the numbers and geographic range. Okay, so just remember, anything with E is Semitic. D-E is Shem. Okay, so these are Semitic peoples. Okay, your technological leaps often cause lineages to grow dramatically in numbers and geographic range. The development of the bronze technology may have given men in haplogroup E1B1B1A1B1A a competitive advantage over the other men, causing haplogroup E1B1B1A1B1A to proliferate and become widespread. So I just wanted to share this model, YDNA chart model by Lion Farm. Right, so shout out to him. I should have put the apostrophe there for my misused grammar right there. But so we see Abraham, right? E1B1P2 or P2, right? And then he has Arab sons, by Keturah and Hagar, right? E1B1B, right? And 215, right? We see that. And then he has Ishmael, right? E1B1B1, right? And 35 that we just talked about, Ishmael. So if we're going by that, right? M35 and M215, right? Hold on. EM35 right here. We see it right here. We see EM215, right? EM35, right? I'm gonna leave Lion Farm's channel in the description box below. But we see E1B1B1A right here, V68, and then we see E1B1B1B Z827, right? We see these primarily from M35s, and then we see M281 E1B1B2, right? You see this. So Esau would not be E1B1B, but E1B1A2 M329, and then we have E1B1A1 M2 EM2 to be Jacob, Israelite. So if you have E1B1A1 or EM2, you're Jacob, Israelite, right? And then so Isaac, right? E1B1A would be EV38, descendant of Isaac, right? So this is the average phenotype of E1B1A, E1B1B carriers, right? We have people from the Maghreb, North Africa, right? You see more Negroid phenotype to more common Arab phenotype right here. Both North Africans, probably relatives because they have E1B1B. This is typically what E1B1B carriers look like, Right here we have Jordanese people, Bedouins from Jordan, and we have another North African here. He's black. These are dark skinned, not necessarily Negroid, but race doesn't exist, but DNA exists, so they would be relatives. They would be blood relatives through E1B1B. One probably descendants from Ishmael right here, pure blood Ishmaelite. These probably more mixed, have more admixture, but they're still seen probably from Abraham's sons with Keturah, his slave woman. Right here we see another phenotype, right? This is what Ishmaelites look like. This is what E1B1B carriers look like. They're not Esau or nothing. They are descendants of Abraham through Ishmael and Arabs, right? Descendants of Shem, descendants of Abraham. Okay, so we have E1B1B, EM81, right? It says E1B1B, 1B, EM81 is the most common Y chromosome haplogroup in North Africa, dominated by its subclade EM183. It might have originated in North Africa or the Levant 5,600 years ago. So it says it's originated in the Levant, right? The parent subclade E1b1b has been found among prehistoric Levantines, Mesopotamians, Anatolians, North Africans. This haplogroup has been found at high levels in medieval Berber and from Al-Andalus among Canary Islands, which are inhabited by Berber Guanche people, with lower but significant amounts also in Portugal, southern Spain because of the Moors, southern Italy, and the Provence region of France as a result of European colonization. EM81 is found in parts of Latin America among Hispanic and USA because Sephardic roots probably. This subclade of E1b1b1 has been observed at 40% in the Carmarcia Pasiegos from Cantabria. And small number EM81 carrying individuals can be found in Malta, northern Sudan, Cyprus among Sephardic Jews. There are 2 recognized subclades, although one is more common than the other. Subclades of E1b1b1b, EM81. We have among Milani Arabs, Israeli Arabs, and it says I'm gonna start from the bottom. E1b1b1b2b, EM183. We have E1b1b2, EM165, and EM107, E1b1b1b1, right? From Malian Arabs, like from Mali. So here's the whole chart from Wikipedia, right? E1b1b. This is the whole chart, the phylogenetic tree of E1b1b. We have EM35. We have originally EM215. We have M281. We have ZA27. We have L539, right? If this is E1b1b1a, right? It's not E1b1a, it's E1b1b1a. So it's found in Mediterranean, North Africa. Particularly, here we have the groups found in Europe, Somalia, Europe, Arabia, North Africa. We have this one, E1b1b1b, right? ZA27, Africa and Western Europe. It's primarily found L19, Z30. I'm gonna go into this more in more detail. So a couple scholars, a couple people think that Z1919, EV13, V12, V65. This is the haplogroups but I'm not really sure because a lot of research shows probably E1b1a, E1b1b1a probably is, like I said, Ishmaelite, Arab, from Abraham's other sons, not necessarily Isaac, but it's a good theory, I'm gonna look more into it, but we have to consider all the options. We do know it's found more in the Levant than E1b1a, but I'll get in detail why that is in another video. But this is possible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's unlikely. So we have here famous carriers of E1b1b, right? On the top 3, they're E1b1a, by the way. So we have Ramses III. He was E1b1a, right? They have Nelson Mandela, E1b1a. Desmond Tutu, E1b1a-G. We have Adolf Hitler. He was E1b1b1, right? So all these Ishmaelites right here, these are all descendants of Abraham right here, all, despite phenotype. We have Lyndon B. Johnson. He was E1b1b1. David Attenborough and his brother Richard Attenborough were both E1b1b1, right? Orville Wright was E1b1b1a2, and his brother Wilbur Wright. Albert Einstein was E1b1b1b2. William Harvey was E1b1b1c1. Napoleon Bonaparte, he was E1b1b1c1, right? We can see here. And so these, starting from Hitler all the way down to Lyndon B. Johnson, David Attenborough, Richard Attenborough, to Napoleon Bonaparte is E1b1b, right? Just different subclades of it. But these three, these two right here, they're Israelites. But these are Ishmaelites and descendants of Abraham too, but not from Isaac. They're not Edomites. They're just other Abrahamic peoples. Ramses, I'm gonna get into that. It's kind of controversial. E1b1a if he was, or like they faked it or something like that. I'm gonna get into that more depth in another video. But We have haplogroup subbranch EM215 in Europe, right? So we see its frequency here, North Africa, East Africa, right? So it says the age of EM215 in Europe is estimated at 10,000 years, with the highest concentrations found in Kosovo, up to 45%, other Balkan nations, and Greece, in southern Italy. This is a very specific genetic subcluster of E1B1B. From its peak frequency in Kosovo, declined steadily westward across southern Europe. This expansion from the Balkans is a major contributing event to the presence of EM215 in contemporary Europe. This haplogroup has a long presence in the ancient in the Near East, as well as demonstrated by its occurrence in ancient remains in Levant and mummies in Egypt. Today, a significant amount of Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardi Jews, 20 to 30%, Sephardi 30%, Ashkenazi 20% of Jews belong to the specific subhaplogroup of EM215. So, as you can see, these 20%, 30% of people, right? They're not Israelites, but they're descendants still of Abraham, right? Defined by the mutation EM123. Supporting this is a major founding lineage of the Jewish people, because a lot of people converts, right? We have a lot of Moorish converts and stuff like that. So it says this widespread ancient haplogroup has made a significant imprint in the African continent, as many parts surrounding the Mediterranean, and then in faraway southern Africa. A notable satellite of EM215 is found in Lake Tanganyika region of Tanzania and the Congo. E1B1B haplogroup has been busy getting around for a long time. So, like I said, Italian Renaissance painter Caravaggio, right? First in flight, the Wright brothers. I went already into that, but these are E1B1B carriers, right? So I want to get into different specific groups of E1B1B. I'm almost done. It says EV22 is found primarily in western Ethiopia, northern Egypt, and the southern Levant in Europe, and is therefore associated with the Phoenicians and the Jews. The Phoenicians could have disseminated EV22 to Sicily, Sardinia, southern Spain, and the Maghreb, and the Jews to Greece and mainland Italy and Spain. Right, I agree with that. EV12 is the most common subclade of EM78 in southern Egypt, over 40% of the population, while its V32 is dominant paternal lineage in Somalia, southern Ethiopia, and northern Kenya. The moderate presence of EV12 in the Near East and across Europe, except Nordic countries, indicate that it could have been a minor Neolithic lineage. Its V32 subclade has not been found outside of Northeast Africa. EV65 is found chiefly in North Africa, with the maximum frequency 20 to 30% observed in Libya, Tunisia, and northern Morocco. The absence of V65 from the Horn of Africa means it would have originated in North Africa. Its TM-RCA is very young, only 2,700 years. V65 has also been found at lower frequencies to 0.5 to 5% in Egypt, Greece, southern Italy, Sicily, and more interestingly among the Sardinians and the Basque. Two populations isolates the strong affinities with the Neolithic and Mesolithic populations to Europe, but both most lacking EV13. However, V65 has not been found in the Levant, the Balkans, or in the non-Mediterranean Europe, which disproves a Neolithic dispersal is strongly North African distribution and very minor presence in parts of southern Europe, with the historical links to northern Africa would have rather suggest that this lineage would have brought to southern Europe by immigrants from North Africa. In the case of Italy, this could have been taken place anytime from the Phoenician Carthaginian period, around 1146 BCE, into the Vandal kingdom. In Greece, V65 would have come from ancient colonies of Cyrenaica and Iberia. V65 could have crossed the Strait of Gibraltar any time since the late Paleolithic. The frequency of E subclades have geographically over time due to founder effects in Neolithic, Bronze Age, Iron Age, i.e. the migration of smaller groups of settlers carrying among one paternal lineages was much more common than any other. Examples of the founder effects of EV12 in Egypt, EV13 in the Balkans, EV32 Somalia, EV65 Mediterranean coast of Africa, EM81 in West Africa. So that's pretty much it for the video, y'all. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. That's just overview of E1B1B and some of its subclades. You know, a little history in it, a little biblical, origins of it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and shalom, God bless.